Charge! The ancient ruins have opened. At the instant the space seal shattered, countless figures around the bone sea instantly turned crimson, their throats issuing low, greedy roars. Their figures were like locusts crossing the border, rushing towards the center of the bone sea. Retreat! Compared to these people who blindly charged forward, Xiaoyan's expression changed at the moment the space shattered. He grabbed Ziyan beside him, tapped the tree trunk with his toes, and his figure retreated sharply. The little fairy doctor and others also reacted quickly, retreating immediately without hesitation. As Xiaoyan and the others retreated, many figures on the surrounding giant trees also hurriedly retreated, apparently having also discovered something. Just as Xiaoyan and the others retreated sharply, the fragments of the shattered space seal suddenly paused. Then, with a loud bang, a violent spatial force that even Dozun experts would be alarmed by swept out like a storm. Those who rushed the fastest bore the brunt, and in almost the blink of an eye, they were swallowed by the storm. Then, miserable screams rose and fell above the bone sea. The violent spatial ripples, like cutting wheat, destroyed all the crowds rushing to the front. Some of the stronger ones who were behind finally realized that something was wrong. Thus, the sea of people who were originally rushing forward suddenly turned around and fled in panic. For a time, outside the bone sea, it seemed particularly chaotic. Bang! Because of the distance, when the space storm spread, it no longer posed any threat to Xiaoyan and the others. At this time, the few people breathed a sigh of relief. Their eyes swept across the scene, and they saw countless figures rolling on the ground with miserable howls, and bright red blood stained a large area of the pale white bone sea. What a terrifying space seal! After countless years, it can still possess such terrifying impact. As expected of the ruins of a Doshin expert, seeing the destructive power caused by the spatial fluctuation, a look of surprise also appeared on the faces of the little fairy doctor and others. Let's go! These guys are too impatient and deserve their bad luck. Xiaoyan smiled, waved his palm, and his figure turned into a streak of rainbow light, sweeping towards the bone sea. At the same time, other experts who had also successfully avoided the spatial fluctuations earlier also immediately used their bodies, turning into blurred figures, and swept into the bone sea. The bone sea has an extremely vast area, and only after Xiaoyan and others swept into the bone skeleton did they discover that, at this moment, a majestic outline like a mountain peak faintly appeared in the bone sea. From a distance, it was like an ancient beast crawling in the bone sea, making people feel terrified. When Xiaoyan and others saw that huge outline, their flying speed could not help but slow down a lot. From the previous space storm, it was enough to understand that this place was by no means a good place. If they were not careful, it might not be impossible to lose their lives here. With the gradual approach, some of the white mist floating in the bone sea gradually became thinner, and the behemoth finally appeared in the sight of Xiaoyan and others. That is a great hall that is nearly 1,000 feet huge, almost like a small mountain peak. Compared with this giant hall, the Soul Hall Grand Hall that Xiaoyan had seen before became extremely small. Looking up at this behemoth standing between heaven and earth, a sense of insignificance arises spontaneously. The giant hall is red all over. From a distance, it looks like it is rising with a flame. In this pale white bone sea, it is particularly dazzling. The surrounding powerhouses were also somewhat lost in thought because of the vast scale of this red giant hall. After a long while, they came back to their senses, looked at each other, and their eyes were filled with some shock. As expected of what a Doshin expert left behind, this kind of handwriting is indeed magnificent and grand. Chi-Chi. Figures gradually slowed down, and then stopped 100 meters away from the red giant hall. Standing here, the giant hall looks even more enormous. At a glance, the top of the giant hall seems to be inserted into the cloud peak. No wonder it is necessary to use a space seal to cover it up. A giant hall of such a large scale, placed anywhere, is an eye-catching existence. Looking at this red giant hall, Xiaoyan could not help but shook his head. He took everyone and slowly landed 100 meters away. Since the ancient Doshin expert would build such a large relic, presumably what is hidden in it is also quite rich. This trip is really worth it. At this moment, outside the red giant hall, many powerhouses are constantly coming, but no one has taken the lead to step into the 100-meter range. Those who can reach here at this time are either big forces or people with great abilities. Naturally, no one would be stupid enough to be the first bird. These people are not in a hurry, and Xiaoyan is naturally not in a hurry. Such a rich treasure, if there are no defensive measures, I am afraid that only a fool would believe it. While Xiaoyan was waiting with his arms folded, he suddenly noticed an icy gaze cast over. Immediately, he raised his brows, turned his gaze, and then fixed on the place where the icy gaze was cast. The owner of the icy gaze is a woman wearing a colorful dress, and her noble temperament makes her look like an ordinary person dare not look directly at her. The phoenix-shaped hair bun adds a bit of extravagance. Feng Qing'er? Looking at this rather familiar face, Xiaoyan's fingers could not help but rub against each other. He did not expect to see her here. Beside Feng Qing'er, there are many people surrounded by her, and the Feng Lei Pavilion and his party are also among them. At this moment, this group of people obviously also found Xiaoyan and others, and their eyes flashed with a cold color. Xiaoyan's gaze swept over this group of people, and then suddenly stopped beside Feng Qing'er. There was a slender man in brocade clothes with white hair. The man should be around 30 years old, but this age is undoubtedly only a youth period for the Tianyao Huang clan.